I know you're not supposed to really do this, but we're like, okay, God, we're going to make a deal with you. On this drive, and we're just in the prairies, if more than 2 birds fly across the road in front of us, we'll know that that's a sign from God that we're going to have 3 kids. It's so stupid, but we couldn't decide. So we're like, okay, we're doing it. So Steph's like, okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Efficient by Design podcast. Again, I'm here with Dustin and Brad, who didn't get the memo about the shirt.
Oh,
Oh yeah, look at that.
how about this?
Yep.
I forget the memo part. Brad just didn't get the shirt. But I have a black one on, so.
Yeah. We're almost a little too, I was worried that we'd be matchy. It's kind of,
Man, and look at me
gross.
with my shorts. Like, we are actually...
kind of, sort of. So today we are going to talk through being fathers primarily. Then, family stuff will come up too, but we might as well just kind of start by just bringing you guys up to speed with our personal life situations and the number and ages of our kids. We are all happily married, not by luck, but by hard work and discipline and hard times. I just hit my 20th year anniversary. Dustin, you're longer.
23.
23 years already, even though I'm actually older than you. And then Brad, who's 3 years. My wife is Brad is 2 years and 10 months younger than me. And you guys are married now for how long?
I want to say it's 18, in a couple weeks. On the 21st, I think we're going to be 18. So we're
18, 20, 23.
We're 20. No, it will be 23 in a couple weeks.
Okay.
On the 19th.
So like a 2 year difference.
Yeah.
18, 20, 22.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. How many kids? What ages?
I have 2 kids, a strapping young lad named Merrick, but everybody calls him Mickey. His sister, when she was really young, she couldn't pronounce Merrick, and so she called him Mickey, and it stuck. So now everybody calls him Mickey. And then I have my daughter. So he's 12, and then I have a 13-year-old daughter named Indiana.
Yeah, and they're close to your 2 years apart, right?
Yep. I want to say 16 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close.
Pretty close.
So you got the 2 oldest is a girl, and then Mickey, the younger one. I've got 4, and they right now are 11, 13, 15, 17. So the oldest 3 are girls. Tegan is the youngest. He is 11, our boy. So him and Mickey I think they are like 4 months apart, and they are thick as thieves, those 2. That thick as thieves.
I know what it means.
Like you're in cahoots. So thieves obviously have to be very united. So okay, that one kind of makes sense. We geek out at what do you call these cliches?
I had it.
It's a saying, or is it a?
No, I don't got it.
Okay, Dustin, what about this?
It was, I wanted to say idiom, but that's not what it is. It's a saying that we all say, but you don't often think about where it comes from or what it means.
Okay, so you did not get the first League of Their Own quote
Reference.
movie, did? Okay, Thick as Thieves. What movie is that from?
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Shut up. Actually, no. Come on, who says it? The thick as thieves, you 2.
Oh, I got it.
I don't.
And you have seen this more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Toy Story.
Shawshank.
Oh, I just watched that last quarter of it.
Do you remember that part when the warden? I think he's talking
Yes.
to Morgan
Yes.
Freeman, and
Yes.
Yeah. So there's another insight into our friendship. There's lots of movie quotes that get tossed around, primarily between my brother and I, because we have seen all the same movies and we watched movies over and over and over and over and over. So the most obscure, ridiculous, you could say, hi, in some weird little way. And the guy's like, I know what movie that's from.
Mhm.
And then we ask Dustin the same questions and he gives us dirty looks, which is fantastic. So we play that game, the movie quote game all the time. And then whether, not idioms, sayings, cliches, I don't know, whatever these goofy sayings are called, we investigate those on a non-stop basis. It is endless.
which our wives absolutely hate most of the time. So we can play it with each other, but as soon as, mind you, I'm stoked. Our kids are definitely getting into it now.
Yeah.
So they love.
Yeah. I asked one of my wife the other day, and she knocked it out of the park. Her guess was like fantastic. I can't remember what it is. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, I've got 4 kids. Youngest is a boy, then 3 girls. And so Tegan, Jada, Casey, and Danae. And Danae is now just trying to get her N and graduating here real soon, which is bizarre. And then she's got plans kind of around Christmas to like head out and into the world, do stuff. So that's crazy. Dustin is kind of beyond that. Our sons
A
are
little bit.
How much older is Jude? How old is Jude?
Jude's 13.
13.
Get into it. Who else?
Jude's our youngest, 13. Then Olivia is 17. And then Megan is 20. And Ben is going to be 23 this summer. 22. He's 22 right now. So our oldest is getting married this summer. He's 2 years into his teaching degree. And our daughter Megan is just finished her first year at university doing a program in art. And yeah, it's hard to believe. And every time I try to think of their ages, I'm like, really? 22, yep. 20, yep.
And you're 43, right?
Yep.
I'm 44, and Brad is 42.
I'm going to be
Almost.
42.
He's 41.
Yeah.
In a bit.
Yep. That's crazy.
So you had Ben how long after you guys were married?
We got pregnant 6 months after getting married.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And
Right away.
Yeah.
So very little practice. Just get into
Well,
it.
we got a lot of practice in that short period of time.
Were you trying to have kids that young?
No. It was
So just like a one-time, whoops.
no,
forgot.
no. Christy was doing her nursing training, and the more she got to know about birth control, she was taking the pill. The more she's like, I don't like this. I don't like what it's doing to my body. I don't like the idea of, because there was potential to get pregnant, and then because she was on the pill for the baby to die.
Mm.
And so she's like, I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
So, we made the decision to not do that. But the science is that it stays in your system. None of our kids were planned.
Really?
No.
Huh.
We never sat down and were like, man, let's try to have a kid.
Yeah.
No, not that I remember. Jude was the closest one to being planned, or Olivia.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, when it's multiple times a day, it's like it's going to happen. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But it was always that kind of thing of like, when you have a kid and you're breastfeeding, the theory is you're pretty good to be safe.
right.
And nope. And so it just kept being like, you're what? Because she called me, I was 21. Holy smokes.
So, yeah, 21.
I told you my brain was foggy today.
Yep.
So the numbers may not add up. My kids may come, because both my kids are working in the back. and
Christy,
my
when
wife.
you watch this, take it easy on this poor man.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So most of my family is here in the building. But
That's crazy.
anyway,
That's true.
we were so thrilled to be pregnant, but at the same time, having kids in your early 20s is amazing and crazy, because we didn't have any sort of plan for our life.
Like, would
But-
you look back and say we were kids when we had kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
But part of it was my car accident,
Mm.
because I felt like I wasn't ready to get married. And then my car accident, I'm like, man, I could have died, and felt like I don't know how much time I got left. Who cares about plans? I love this girl. I want to be with her. Damn it. Let's get married.
Mhm.
And we did. And I love that. And I love that we had been early. It just meant that any sort of plan, like Christy was a nurse, and before we were pregnant, it was just construction for me and nursing for her. And we could put her entire paycheck into savings.
Mhm.
And I think about that now, and it's like, what?
That's crazy.
We can't do that now. If Christy or I stop working, we're sunk. And the notion back then of like, we could have easily gotten a down payment for a house
Mhm.
within a few years. We could have traveled around, and all, friends of ours who did that kind of stuff. You're like, wow, good for you.
Yeah.
Instead, we're having babies. And so shortly after Ben, Megan comes along, and then Olivia, like they're all within, a couple years ish.
Yeah.
And now that I'm 43, I could technically have grandkids, and I hope for Ben and Bryn's sake they don't have kids as early as we did,
Yeah.
but that I could be a grandpa in 5 years.
You could be a grandpa
In 2.
in 2 years or a year and a half.
Exactly. But
40
for their sake, I
4-year-old
hope
Grandpa Dustin.
Yeah, I hope that they wait. I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just that it pushes you into a survival mode that is sometimes hard to deal with.
Especially now, like you said before, back then you could have a parent stay home full time and do that, whereas now,
Yeah, you can't now.
that would be so hard. Which
That's
is
a more unique circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say that. People say, "Oh, you're just stupid and dumb if you get married by this age. If you have kids by this age, you're just ridiculous. That's just the wrong thing to do." Like that's totally dependent on the circumstance, the mentality of the people, how they're wired. Like that's a far broader answer than a yes and no black and white answer. There's maybe the stereotypical answers, but that doesn't apply to everybody.
Well, look at it this way. I couldn't imagine waiting until my 30s to have kids, because the kind of energy that it took to not only parent, but be a husband and go to work. And just like when our daughters were being born, we were working together, and you're up at 5 and you're getting out the door and you're just sweating all day long in the heat. And then you're home and boom, you can't just put the feet up and have a beer and hang out. You got kids and they want attention, and
we're building our own houses.
We're building our own, like all the craziness. And I look back and I'm like, I needed to be dumb and 20 to handle all that. And I'm thankful that we had community, we had other people to rely on to get through those things. But looking back, it's like, geez. And I think of, Ben and Bryn and their marriage and them having kids, it's likely they're going to have to move to Alberta or Saskatchewan to try and build a life. Because in BC, especially Vancouver, how do you build a life if you both have to be max capacity working and you can't afford?
Well, and I think all our 3 of us have also, like you said earlier, had a lot of that support when we were young, as far as having grandparents or good friends or a community that can help you. And I think that is, we can take that for granted, I think, to a certain degree, because there is so many people that don't have that at all. Yep. And then you talk about a single parent, trying to make a go of it. And the difference from, again, being back when we had our kids, where you had, you could make a go of it on one income. I think we are so blessed to have this place from what Luke has been able to build and to be able to support multiple families through this business. It's such a blessing. Like it's such a beautiful thing. But again, I don't have Facebook, but I will do the marketplace through my wife's Facebook. And sometimes I'll see kind of like the mums chat group things. And it's constantly, how am I supposed to make a go of it? I have these many kids. I have these bills. I don't own a house. I'm renting this and I have payments, and it's just nonstop, And so it is that hard thing to, because again, I had kids young, and I'm really glad I did, not as young as you. And there's pluses and minuses to both sides. Yeah. So, because again, they're at the same time, in this day and age, it is more normal for people to have kids later. It's like
less kids,
but more when they're in their 30s or late 20s, or even some in their early 40s. Like, again, that's more and more common. And I'm sure, I don't know exactly what the reason for it is. And there's pluses to that as well. But I don't know, what would you say are the benefits of having kids young? And then also the benefits of having, as I don't want to say, and what are the negatives about it being older? Because obviously there's benefits to both, and then there's negatives to both.
Yeah, the obvious one for me has been energy.
Yeah.
And because Jude and Ben are 9-ish years apart. And the amount of energy I had for Ben versus Jude is substantial. And I often feel bad for Jude because there's a lot of things that I did with the older kids, whether it's jumping on the trampoline and just running around, like just physical playing, that I don't do with Jude as much, just because I'm older and life situation is a bit different. But he also gets the plus of, I was the youngest in my family, and it was really hard to watch my siblings all move out and go on their adventures, and you're left at home with mom and dad. And you're like, this is lame. Until you discover that it's not lame. And like a road trip with my parents to Alaska was not super lame like I thought it was going to be. But it was amazing. Like one of my favorite trips with them. And that's going to be Jude's experience. Like he's going to be able to do stuff with Christy and I that the other kids didn't really get a chance for.
Yep.
But I think being young and having kids young, if I'm being completely honest and without any sort of preparation, I would say the con list is probably bigger. And
con list is bigger having kids young?
Yeah.
Okay.
Only because for me personally, the struggle as a dad and a husband, with my own journey of being like, what am I going to do for work and where am I headed and what am I going to do, had us moving a lot. And I really regret that. Not that there hasn't been lots of good, because there has. Sure. But I think as you get older, you start to develop a better sense of path. And having kids when you're trying to figure out the path, I know it was hard on them and it was hard on me. So that aspect to me sticks out pretty big. But that's just me. I'm sure other people who have the experience of having kids young, it's different.
Well, when we just in the last day or so discussed about a podcast and talking about parenting and being dads, fathers, right away I was like, "Ooh, that's a touchy topic," because it's really, really common for people to approach those subjects and that aspect of your life with a really black and white lens. These people are stupid. This is the way it should be. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. And it's so much more diverse than that. And given the different variables that we all grow up with and experience through how we were brought up, our own personal psychology, this location that we live in, our parents' example of how they raised us, what we've seen around us, what our influences from our friends, it's so diverse to say that one is right and one is wrong. Well, that's specific to a particular person only.
Yep.
Right. So again, from your situation, I know we've talked in depth over the years about your guys' situation and the moves and the difficulty of it. What was your guys' kind of process? So you talked about the pros and cons of older, younger. So you would kind of lean towards waiting a bit longer to have a bit more of your kind of direction and path set. And then as far as, pros and cons to later, obviously you're a little more established, but you don't have the energy for the kids. So you can kind of understand how people I'm more established. I've got a career. We've got a house. We're kind of got a good foundation. We don't have the energy. We'll have only one or two if we're going to have kids at all.
Yeah. I would say for me, I would differ from your experience, in saying that I'm really glad I had the kids young. And I know you're not saying and we also had 2 kids. That's a lot different than 3 or 4. Like, I think sometimes people don't realize the difference. When you have 2 kids and 2 parents, you can think about any scenario, getting into a car, going on a vacation, going skiing.
You're not outnumbered.
You're not outnumbered, right? You can do, and we also had our kids close together, which again, some people like that. Some people don't. I liked having the kids close together because I could take the kids skiing or surfing or what, and they're so close in age. I'm not doing one thing with one and then waiting 3 years till I can start doing it with the other one. So I like that. But as far as
you're not just leaving the baby in diapers on the beach,
right.
You're surfing with the teenager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I personally, but at the same time, my wife and I, when we got married, we were here in Summerland, which is where my wife grew up, and we wanted to get away because my wife grew up here and she grew up in the church and everybody knows. And so when they see their little Summerland princess get married to this strapping young
Literally.
lad. Yep.
Like really handsome young man.
Yeah. Yeah. And they see that, like, you kind of get tired pretty quick if everyone, like, everywhere you go, like, oh, there's this sweet young Mary's Brad and Steph, so cute.
Show us
And-
your abs,
Yes,
Brad.
that's
Show
right.
us your
Yeah.
abs.
Oh. Anyway, so we were like, and so not that that's bad. You feel very loved, but you want to get it. So we went to Australia. My wife was doing university at the time. So we got to go and do, like you said, some of those traveling things and had some of that adventure. And then, you know, when we came home, then we started having kids pretty soon. So we did get that experience of kind of, the travel and some of those fun adventures. And then, having the kids and not being older, like I would say that having kids when I'm older, well, I honestly, I go back to when you and I were young, and my parents, because they had us when we were, how old was mom and dad when they had us?
They probably
They
had
were
you
young,
when you
like-
were just born.
I think so. Like, I must have been
They were, well, I was born 2 days before their first anniversary, and they got married, I think, at 20 and 21.
Yeah.
So they got into it quick, kids right away, and not on purpose.
Yeah.
That
And so,
happened quick.
and so that being said, knowing that that's the case, I loved our childhood. And I think part of it is, yes, they were young, but at the same time, I think they were also pretty adventurous parents, people that, you know, they took us to all these different places. We got to live in the mountains for years. We lived in the Gulf Islands. So part of that is circumstantial, not just because they were young, but there was a lot of energy. And I remember as I got older, wanting to kind of model that after the way we were kind of raised, you know? So I always thought, because it was just you and me, we don't have any other siblings. I thought, okay, 2 kids. I like that. And I like that they were young and that my parents are still young enough. Now they have grandkids to still be able to do awesome, fun things with them. I also like that kind of planning to be like, okay, I don't want to be this super, super old grandpa. Like the things that our kids have got to do with our parents, with my dad and with my in-laws, it has been fantastic because they're still able to do a lot of those things too. So I'd say that's a positive.
So you guys had kids on purpose when you started, when you had Indy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had kids on purpose. One of them for sure. And we weren't sure. After we had the 2, we were actually thinking, do we have a third?
Mm-hmm.
And we were driving from Calgary to Edmonton for some reason. We had the 2 kids in the back, and this is at the stage where, like, we either have one now, like we actually try, or we were done. And so we actually came up with this thing, and I know you're not supposed to really do this, but we're like, hey, God, we're going to make a deal with you.
Really?
And we're like, on this drive, and we're just in the prairies, we're in the farmland, and I want to say it was about a 20-minute period. We said, okay, we're going on the car here. If more than 2 birds fly across the road in front of us, we'll know that that's a sign from God that we're going to have 3 kids. So stupid, but we couldn't decide. So we're like, okay, we're doing it. So Steph's like, okay. So we're driving the car, 1 bird, keep driving. Another like 10 minutes later, 1 bird, and now we're like stressed. We're like driving
A whole flock.
We're waiting for a whole flock of birds to go by, and no other bird. And then timer went off after that 20 minutes, and we're like, okay, we're done. No more kids. We're just having the 2, and that's actually how we stopped at 2. But we weren't like Dustin. Like you're I don't know if loins is the right word. Or your genetics, like to be like they must be just off the charts.
It is off the charts. Christy was worried because she always wanted to be a mom and was worried, like, because she, you know, different people she knew had a hard time getting pregnant. So she was like, man, what's it going to be like for me? Is this going to be really pregnant?
Yeah.
And then, just push that pregnant. And then pregnant. And you're like, what the?
So no contraception. It's just there
was, but no barrier.
Like you're just too much of a man. Just bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't the first condoms back in the day? Weren't they? I want to say some type of like sheep's intestine or some type of like. Wasn't that the early?
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong. People are gonna be like, "That's such a wives' tale. You're such an idiot." But I thought that was some of the
How come
first.
the wives only tell the tales?
That's dangerous.
That's a bad one.
That's another one. Wives' tale. What's that come from? There we go. We'll be talking that out.
I bet you it is, just to go into a little bit. Like, again, all the kids that are staying at home, you know, you're not supposed to go outside because I think moms were really good to be like, if you do this, here's the consequence.
I didn't. That's not where I thought you were going. I thought you were going somewhere else with that. But
no, not in a literal tale. I mean, Yeah, but again, how many of those things do you hear the little stories like you across the road and you go there, you're gonna get eat by wolves. You could do, wives' tales.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, how many of your children
Mhm.
are interested in trades, having been involved in them yourself?
I would say they're probably, again, 13 and 12. They're not really in that mindset yet. My son loves going into the
That's
shop
too bad. By
and
that age, my kids already had their seals.
I figured. So again, I can see like the interest in creating things that both of them they love to work with their hands. They love to go into the shop and use my tools and bang things together. And Indy's very much into art and a lot of that kind of stuff. So for me, I'd say a little bit young for that truly yet. But what about you, Luke?
Well, Danae, our oldest, she wants to be like a baker, chef, pastry expert. So that'd be a trade, but not like in the sense that we would be familiar with, but very hands-on. And she loves that. Casey, incredible artist, and super, super handy. Like she's actually right now, she's making a cardboard tree in her room.
Oh, wow.
And it's like Disneyland quality. Like she's taking cardboard and like massaging it down to it's like super pliable and shaping it and making this incredible tree that's like
Cool.
all like looks like it's grown into the walls. It looks amazing.
Oh, I bet.
Incredible.
She is super. Like when you
Super
say
crafty.
that, if I didn't know who she was, I'd be like, that's lame.
Yep.
But because I know that your daughter, it's probably wicked.
And she's been working on it for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and she just keeps picking away. It looks incredible.
Yeah.
But there is a thing, when it's kind of similar. A friend of yours is like, hey, check out my kid's art. And you're like, or it's, look at my baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So she's big into art. Jada, she loves dance and she's not into trades sort of stuff really at all. Tegan, he really wants to be a mechanic.
Okay.
So he's hands-on, loves the way things work, and the thought of like mechanics and welding and building. Like he's like, he really, really likes that idea. I think Mickey is similar too. I mean, he's got a really, really good mind for it. So yeah, both our boys seem to have a tendency to it. I mean, this day and age too, there's a pretty big priority is like just like limiting kind of screen time and what they spend their casual time doing.
Yeah.
Be like hands-on, getting outside, but at the same time preparing them for the world that they're going to enter.
Sure.
Because the reality of the world that we live in now is so digital, and that is a real part of it. So I want to keep them in this like bubble. It's like you don't get to do anything until you graduate and you leave, then you can do your own thing. Like I want to actually prepare them for what's beyond. But that's always like a big point to try to balance that in a healthy way, to like foster some good actual practical hands-on skills and be aware and savvy and capable.
That's something I'd think if I could go through the dad test, I'd get like bad score on. Giving my kids intentional. I have other friends, not just you two, who are really good at it and maybe move beyond being good to being a bit much.
Sure.
And forcing their kids to do a bunch of stuff that the kid just hates, but they're like, nah, you got to do it. You got to learn this thing. I'm on the other end. There's definitely different seasons where we've gotten our kids to do things and try things, like whether it's we're going to teach you how to change the wheel on the car and change the oil and all that stuff. Get under the car and I don't want to. I want to go play. Yeah. No, you're going to learn this thing.
Yep.
And piano lessons, music, all that kind of stuff. But there's definitely been times where I'm like, my kid hates this, and I hate that they hate this, and I hate all the things that are happening right now, just trying to get them to do this thing. And definitely been times where I'm like, you've made this so friggin' miserable for everyone in the family. It's ruining our life.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this anymore. But just thinking of like, those that do it really well, engage the interest of their kid, like see what they like to do and foster it and try to give them opportunity to do something in that realm. It's like the energy it requires to do that well. You have to be so present, and you have to be thinking ahead, and you have to be fully engaged. And I think when you go through crisis and trauma in your life, that's what leaves
Mm.
is your ability to be present and engage. And I look back and I'm like, man, there's definitely been seasons where I have been that and seasons where I've just been out.
Mhm.
And that's just sad because I think as a dad, you're always comparing yourself to other people and everyone else looks like they're doing it really great. Yep. And you can feel like I'm not doing those things, right?
Mhm.
Brad was pointing to himself, just joking, but I think you're super good at what I just described.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Like taking your kids out, being positive and fun and sharing experiences with them that are unique and different and lots of variety, like giving them a chance to taste this and that experience. And I haven't done that in the same way. We've done it in different ways by actually
Mhm.
physically moving and doing crazy
Yeah.
things with our kids. But in regards to like a week daily type of life of doing that, like come play this game with me,
Sure.
you know, come outside and we're going to build a little fort in the backyard type of stuff.
Mhm.
I think sadly in the way I operate is when I get overwhelmed, that creative, spontaneous side of me disappears.
Right.
And I can look back, and then this is another argument for, you know, having kids young. I definitely had way more of that.
Mm.
And, you know, as I've gotten older and hit some hard things, that aspect of me fades away,
Sure.
which is sad because it feels like a piece of you disappears and your kids lose
Mhm.
because of that.
Yeah.
But I think knowing that that balance of being able to give your kids genuine opportunities. Like we got our kids to play different sports and none of our kids have been interested in sports, which is super sad for me because I love sports and I wanted, one of the things I look forward to most in being a dad was cheering for my kids. Like teary-eyed thinking about it
Mhm.
because it was meaningful to me when my parents were at my basketball games and stuff. And not being able to do that for my kids is actually kind of sad. Like I'm bummed. But all of our kids have tried sports in different ways and it's like not for me, or they got really bullied and they're like, no. And Jude's shown an interest. And part of me is like, I don't want to get too excited and push him, but let him have that experience. But that, like, how has that experience been for you guys trying to, you see a potential in your kid, foster it, encourage it, and give a little bit of push in a positive way, but not shove them down on their face, trying to get them to force them to do something.
Well, and before even, I was just going to say, your kids, like you said, as much as they're not maybe into those sports. Again, I was stoked just the other day. I think I was on the phone with you and I could hear Megan or someone in the background being like, Dad, the game's on. Just
Yeah.
even that stoke that they're starting to get just to be watching sports with you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm showing you the Edmonton Kings highlights in the thing
Yes.
there. And your daughter, Megan, she's like, she sees it coming. She comes right in there and she's just like stoked right into it. Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, that's difference, you know, but they obviously still enjoy that
Yes.
competitive sports aspect.
Yeah. And I think for all my kids are very creative, very artistic. And both Christy and I are that way. But I think one thing that all of my kids have developed is me sharing with them my love for different movies. And so I love animation. And so I've shared with them all my favorite movies and shows. And they've all just like absorbed that and loved that. And that's had a huge influence. And so for Megan to go off and do this amazing program in art, she's taking all of that inspiration that she grew up with as a kid and all these different movies and like Hayao Miyazaki films that are just phenomenal storytelling and artwork. Like our kids have this diverse experience of like, wow, storytelling is this way.
Yeah.
And Ben's the same, and how he's going to be as a teacher is going to be phenomenal. He wants to teach English and art. And I see that aspect of my personality and interests, my kids grabbing onto it and really running with it,
Yeah.
which is really fun and exciting.
And just for people to know as well, when Dustin says, hey, he is artistic and his kids are artistic, like we're talking like next level artistic, like very, I have never met another family that is as artistic when it comes to like pen to paper, drawing, coloring, designing the creatures. And yeah, like, and so I'm Dustin, just for those of you who don't know him, he is, which is pretty much everybody. Like, we're talking like when I was young, you were pretty much like when I saw your art, your drawings, I was like, oh, I know someone who can draw comic book style stuff. Like, I remember watching,
legit.
like
you
legit.
Well, he's made comics.
Yeah, like so to that level, and then to see it naturally come up in your kids drawing just as good and different things and better things, and Megan's and the paintings, like so ridiculously talented. And I know when they lived with you guys, they like transferred a bunch of that over to your kids. Your kids are like watching their kids doing stuff, and now Casey and a bunch of your kids are just ridiculous. It's amazing how good you guys are at art.
Brad.
Like, it's crazy.
Well, Ben, it's fun seeing the relationship between Ben and Jude because they're 9 years apart. You know, as your kids get older, they don't realize, like we didn't realize, what you have. And so Ben noticing, like, I still remember the day we brought Jude home from the hospital.
Sure.
His face on the window watching and like running out makes me emotional thinking about it, but was so excited that he had a little brother.
Yeah.
Because it was like big brother, sister, little brother, like little.
Yeah.
And him being 9 years old and getting a little brother is pretty awesome. And seeing him now come home from university, he's about to get married. This is our last summer with him at home. And immediately the first thing he starts doing when he's home is he starts pulling out all these craft supplies. And he starts saying, hey, Jude, I've got all this. It's like clay, but you put it in the oven and it kind of forms like plastic. And he's like, Jude, let's make all these awesome creatures. And so Jude's just like, what? Yes. And so the whole table downstairs is still covered in all this stock craft supplies. And Ben has in the window, like when you come over, he's got this wicked like beast that he's made. And as he built this like metal skeleton, puts all the plastic molding clay on top. And he's got his iPad out, and he and Jude, I go down there, and they're both sitting there with a anatomy reference for different animals, and they're literally carving every muscle group into the creatures that they're making. And the two brothers are just sitting there all day, just carving little monsters and things out of these materials that they have. And it's because they're coming together on a shared passion, but it's a big brother intentionally making space for that to happen with his little brother because he knows it's changing, that his time at home with his little brother is almost over. And I remember that with my big brother when he moved on. You suddenly realize like, oh, I had all this time to have this relationship with my little brother and I blew it by just being all absorbed in my world. And now I have and you want to hurry up and kind of make the most of it.
Sure.
And I love that our kids are doing that. And yeah, it's not necessarily the, I don't know, traditional stuff, but it's awesome. And I love seeing them do that. And like you say, Olivia's totally into the Oilers because primarily her grandpa's obsessed with the Oilers and Christy's side of the family is all Oilers. And she's just suddenly into it. And it's so awesome because she's so vibrant with it. She creates a gravity for other people to come in.
Right.
That's why Megan's into it because she like
interesting
gets her to sit down and watch the games. And it's so fun.
Yeah.
But a lot of that stuff you can't control. You create opportunities for. But it is so rewarding to see my kids as they get older making those attempts to build relationship with each other. Like that.
That's awesome.
That makes me probably the most proud and thankful. Even more than if whatever they got their trade early and started a great business and stuff like that.
Do you want some tissues? Because your eyes are really watery.
Well, I think you should be pretty proud of me. I'm doing a good job.
You are. Like I'm not. I don't mind tissues as in like stop being a baby. Like that's pretty. That's legit. Yeah. What was the question that you asked us? I kind of took it over there, but you asked a really good question. You were kind of pointing it. Can you re-say that?
It was something along the lines of wanting to hear from you guys your experience of wanting to engage your kids in learning things and giving them opportunity. What has that been like for you? And kind of sharing your own, kind of just copy what I did and share your own experience of the comparison you feel,
Right.
and wanting to give your kids opportunity to learn things, and because you want to see your kids succeed in the sense that they've discovered themselves, they discover what they love, and they can do it, and they go and they try it. What has that been like for you guys?
You know, for me and my wife, we had Danae after we were married for 2 years, and that was intentional. Like we basically planned, okay, after a couple of years, we felt ready to engage that as far as like where work was at in business and livelihood. We're like, you know, things are very volatile and unknown in many areas, but we felt like, no,
It's a good time to start having sex.
We
2
wanted
years
to,
after.
yeah. But we thought we want to have kids while we're young. And so we want to kind of engage the whole family dynamic at this stage and get into it. And I was a bit of an anomaly, I think, in that I looked forward to having kids in a family probably since I was like 12, 13. And like you said, that was largely due to the relationship, you know, primarily with dad, you know, as much as, you know, mom was a huge support and everything. But, you know, dad was like super active. He was young, you know, through my teen years. I considered him my best friend. You know, like we hung out tons, and I just came with him everywhere. You know, he was doing all kinds of stuff with wilderness skills training and hosting groups, and I was just at his side, his assistant, with all of it all the time.
Was all super fun stuff.
It was, yeah. So we're doing mountaineering and whitewater rafting stuff and obstacle course stuff in the
And you were
bush.
so capable that it wasn't like, oh, I have my son. That's kind of, you know, like he gave you a lot of responsibility, and early you were like leading things, like being a legit.
Well, it's weird now to think of like the age that I was then, when I was like, we're doing wilderness skills training and taking groups out to do, you know, rappelling these big cliff faces and bluffs, and I would be on belay. And I'm like, I was like 11.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What? Like my son's
crazy.
11. I'm like, that really?
He wouldn't be
And I
able
was like, the forts that I was building and the stuff that we were doing in our childhood, I'm like, that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture
How is
Tegan
that?
doing that. He's so small.
He's so tiny.
Yeah.
So I was just like, yeah, that's a weird thing. It's like, I don't know, in the 70s, 80s, you know, we just grew up. I mean, I should say 80s, early 90s, born in 79. But the stuff that I was doing then, I'm like, we just grew up younger.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was weird. So anyway, having been around my dad and him being so engaged and taking us camping. So he'd like every year he'd take each Brad and I on a separate trip on the motorcycle. We'd go motorcycle camping overnight first year, just down the road a ways. And then, you know, by the time we were in our senior year in high school, 2 motorcycles, drive down the Oregon coast to California. And so
back then you could be on a motorbike and your feet could be like 2 feet away from the pegs, and that was legal. Whereas now I think legally your whoever's on the back has to have their feet on the pegs.
Okay.
So
yeah,
and
that was like
Luke
those
falling
things.
asleep on the back of the motorbike and dad having to literally slap him because he could feel your dead weight just hit the back.
Yeah. So anyway, we did lots of camping, outdoor stuff. And I mean, one thing that was a testament to my parents' situation and their pursuit in life was that in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, my dad was actually at a point where he was managing like 3 keg restaurants. They had a couple properties. They were doing really well. And through just life circumstance and kind of how they felt led, they decided to walk away from everything and move to Headley with 350 people. They were living in Vancouver previously, in the Vancouver area. Moved to Headley, 350 people, and give away everything in the midst of like the early 80s interest rate craziness. And they sold everything and walked away with nothing to move into a trailer and have foster kids and work with juvenile delinquent children. Like, and my dad's siblings are all like very well-to-do, you know, they're high finance stuff and dentist, and our Uncle Merlin rather was involved with.
I was going to say geology, a geologist for oil companies.
So they're all well-to-do, and then dad kind of goes to kind of country bumpkin town and works with kids and makes no money. And they walked away from everything to do something they felt led to do and were passionate about. And so what that demonstrated to us was this, like, you know, what actually really matters. You know, you want to develop relationship and family and be spontaneous and open and have fun and take some risks and be a good steward, be responsible in the process. So anyway, my childhood, observing our family, having you and I that were close together, fairly close in age, and having such engaged parents and doing so much, I was like, man, what kind of a family do I want someday? What kind of environment do I want to create for my kids? Like I want to have kids while I'm young, so I can still be active and able-bodied. I think I'd want to have two boys. Seems good. It's what I knew.
Yeah.
Seemed right.
Because you could choose that.
Because you can pick. Yeah. And so I gave a ton of thought through my teen years about what kind of a parent I would be. What kind of a husband would I be? Like I was excited about that. So put a ton of thought into it. So then when I did meet my wife and we ended up getting married, it was actually later on that I originally assumed I'd get married and have kids, which was still young. I was 24 when I got married and had Danae when I was 26. And I was like, okay, family, having kids and intentionality. And I've got like the strategy and I've got I want to be this kind of a dad. And so went into it, with my eyes fairly wide open and with some kind of like hopes or expectations that I wasn't holding with too tight a grip. Be like, these are the things I kind of hope for. This is how I prepared and how I do it, I think, but we'll see what comes and how it goes. And my wife comes from a family of 4 kids. And of course, it was just the 2 of us. So the number of kids was like somewhat debated. I'm like, 2 will be good.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I think I want at least 4. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
4? Well, hopefully it's one at a time and we can just see how it goes. And if we can have a kid like every 2 years-ish, we'll see. So yeah, we have Danae. The first little bit when she was newborn was kind of rocky, and both my wife and I are firstborn, kind of rule following, analytical, logical thinkers. And it was after a couple months, we were like, we want to like try and do this really well, and read some books and kind of developed good sleep habits. And we kind of became somewhat efficient with how we were going to get through get our kids sleeping through the night and just develop routine and stay the course and try to do the hard thing that would benefit us in the near future. That would mean we were sleeping well and the kids sleeping well. Like we were strategic, and for the most part, it went pretty good. There was all kinds of bumps and difficulty along the way, but we felt like we were like, okay, this is working. We're moving forward. And then, and so that was obviously Danae. It's a girl. We're like, oh, I guess I'm not having 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a girl. And we didn't find out with any of our kids until they were born, with the exception of Tegan, our last one. But when Danae was born, I just had it in my head that, well, I have 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
A boy. And everyone said, oh, you'll have boys. You're going to have boys for sure. You can tell. Danae is born. I was like, a girl. Okay. I mean, like, obviously it could have been a girl, and I'm fine with that. But all of the thought I've given over all the years of being a dad has revolved around a boy. I haven't really given any strategic, intentional thought about how do you raise a girl, because I'm pretty darn aware of the things I'd want to instill in a boy, and caution, and the things I'd want to be careful of, and courage. But like, okay, a girl. Now, what are the important, valuable things like I want to instill in them? Like, it's very, very different. So kind of like reevaluate all of that, and then we end up having Casey, another girl. And then we get pregnant again. There was a bit of a bigger stretch between Casey and JD. We lost one in there, had a miscarriage. So there's a bit of a bigger gap in that between those 2. And then when we got pregnant with Jada, so again, when we had pregnant with Casey, everyone we knew, oh yeah, it'll be a boy. We can tell it'll be a boy.
Yeah.
Another girl. And we're like, whatever. People don't know what we're talking about.
Because at this time, all of our friends, everyone was having girls.
Everybody. And so then we get pregnant the 3rd time, and Tiana feels completely different. She's carrying the baby different craving. Like everything about the pregnancy was completely different than the first 2. And everyone's like, you're having a boy. I'm like, yep, sure. Like if there's any truth to all the things we hear, guaranteed this is a boy. To the point that people stop my wife in the grocery store, like, oh, just so you know, person my wife had never seen before, you're having a boy. You're welcome. Okay. So we're like, for sure. And everything was so different about the whole pregnancy. And of course, then, okay, here we go. Baby comes out. Girl, pardon? Okay. All right. Not a boy. Okay, fine, good. And also you're like, hey, nobody knows anything about what you're carrying and how you're carrying. It doesn't mean anything. So another girl, great. And then basically it was like, we were thinking at this point, Tiana was still, we didn't feel done. even after we just had you still in the hospital, I think Tiana was like, I can do that one more time. It's like, wow, that's incredible. And I had kind of obviously come on board, you know, like my personal preference was 2, but I'm like, we didn't feel done, and I was open to having more, but that wasn't my initial strategy and intention. But I'm like, no, this seems right, and it's going well, and we're enjoying things. So it was basically with Tegan, we were at a position where like, okay, we want to have one more. We want to keep them close together. This is the earliest we would ever bother trying to put them really close, but likely it's taken us a few months to get pregnant each time. Well, we got pregnant right away. So Tegan and Jade are really close. So then we were actually debating. I remember thinking about like, okay, I really was, we're gonna be done at 4. We're finished at 4. And I remember thinking like, I hope it's a boy, because I would like to experience that. And we hadn't found out what we were gonna have with any of our kids, but when we started thinking about that moment when the reveal takes place at childbirth, which was natural for all of them except the first, and they had to be a cesarean because it was, well, all 3 girls were super high risk. But anyway, we didn't want that moment when Tiana delivers our 4th and have it be a girl and have a moment of like, I'm not gonna know what it's like to have a boy. I didn't want this, like, as much as I'm totally 100% satisfied and happy to have a healthy baby, or if not even, whatever, I didn't want this moment to be like, I have to let that go. So we decided to find out with our 4th, just so we could process that moment beforehand. Turns out it's going to be a boy. Like, okay, great. So anyway, we have a boy. So then we've got 4 kids. So that's a big backstory to kind of like speak to what your actual question was, like the intention and strategy with raising your kids and what you wanted to instill and the kind of relationship you expect to have. And Brad and Steph had their 2 kids kind of in line with how when we had our last 2, somewhat similar. And they were done at 2. And it was interesting over the following years to see your guys' ability with one-on-one to kids and the time and energy you could give to them versus Tiana and I being spread much more thin, and how you have to parent and engage. And it's different. And there was times I would feel guilty for the level of like one-on-one attention I could give a kid, because there's 4 and there's not one each. And there's a reality too. It's I think it's called the traveling salesman problem, which is a kind of a fascinating kind of mathematical problem. So basically it's laid out that if you're a salesman and you've got, say, 30 stops to make within a city, you're going to be, you make the best money if you can be the most efficient with the path you take throughout the city. And there's an equation that will tell you how many different options there are for different paths that you can take. And so let's say there's 6 stops you've got to make. You got to try to figure out which the best, most efficient route. Well, the number of options, it goes 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. So if you do the math, that's a big number. That's how many options you have to weigh out. Which one am I going to go to first and second and third? So if you apply that to communication between people, if you have 2 people, path of communication, it's 1 times 2. There's 2 paths of communication. It goes back and forth. That's it. If you have 3 people, it's 1 times 2 times 3. Now there's 6 potential paths of communication that take place with 3 people. When there's 4, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, 24 paths of communication that take place. Like, it just amps up like crazy. So now you've got, tension between your children, and this one's saying that to that one about what they said, who then this person heard and talked to them, and you're trying to like make sense of the situation, and you're trying to be an engaged, intentional parent. And at times as a man, as a dad, they're like, you're hearing it all, I'm like, okay, time out, everybody. Everyone stop. Everybody say sorry to each other. Forget what happened. We're going to start fresh and move forward, because you can't follow the path that's taken place. It's just this hot mess. So not to say that it is better or worse to have more or less, it's different. And the intention, the energy and attention it takes and what you have to prioritize is different. So there's a side of me where I feel like I consistently kind of analyze, like, to what degree am I giving my kids what they require, and what do I have to work to do to like be at peace with that, to know that I've done kind of the best that I can, or done it to a reasonably decent degree. And then seeing you guys with your kids and how engaged you can be, instead of like feeling guilty, I'm like, no, I'm doing decent, not the best I could do. I'm doing decent with what I've got and the time that I have and our situation.
Yeah.
And then the reality of being a parent that is actually engaged with their kids. Because again, growing up, thinking about having kids, I'm like, I'm going to be super consistent. I'm going to treat them the same so it's fair. And I had this like really idealistic idea of what that would look like. And then you have kids, and it doesn't take you long to realize like, oh, they're not all the same.
Yeah.
Like, forget the boys and girls difference. Like, this one is super stubborn and hard-headed, and you got to beat them over the head to like make any kind of an impact at all that they will actually listen to. And the other one, you can raise your voice just slightly, and they break down and cry and are like just a blubbering mess. Like, okay, if I'm going to respect these kids for who they are, I have to actually cater to each of them to a degree so that I actually am respectful. That takes way more energy and work on my part, but that's actually showing care and love and respect to them. So that's like a daily, it takes a huge amount of energy, and it's a daily endeavor to like realize who they are, what they need, how I need to engage with them to best build into them. So a little example, Tegan is super, super sensitive. This is so terrible. He's super, super sensitive. Love him to death, but I've got to be really, really careful with him. And so 2 weeks ago, Dad was watching a hockey game, and he texted me and said, hey, you want to come down and watch a hockey game with us? Like, sure. It's like, Tegan. And I go down. The girls were busy. I'm like, yeah, I'll come down. And so we jump in the truck, and we're driving down. It's just like 4 or 5 minutes away. We get halfway down the road, and Tegan looks at me, does Grandpa know that I'm coming? I'm like, yeah, I told him. He was kind of mad, but we're just going. So I totally joking. And I'm driving. I'm kind of a little smirk. And I'm just kind of watching him. So like, surely he knows. That was a complete joke, because there's no way Dad would ever have anything negative.
Yeah.
And Tegan's like, I can see his face. He's kind of, you serious? I'm like, no, I'm totally joking. Totally joking. He's like, Grandpa was mad. I'm like, no. I'm just kidding. He's great. He's like, okay. And he starts to bawl. And I'm like, Tegan, I'm so sorry. Like, I just crushed him. And like, as he gets older, I'm playful with him, and I try to be careful and sensitive and push him. You know, I want him to gain some resilience and some thicker skin, but still not. I don't want to crush that sensitive side of it, because that's so valuable. And as a tradesman, you know, I can be guilty of this. I'm like, you suck it up. It's hard. Life is hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And you know what? The things that are the most valuable take a lot of work, and they hurt. So don't go through life as a victim, expecting handouts and be some entitled person that wants everything just given to them on a silver plate. No, you're going to have to work for stuff. It's going to be uncomfortable. So suck it up, and I will be transparent and be vulnerable and show my hardship, but hopefully you can kind of see, you know, from your perspective that, you know, hard work pays off at times. And sometimes you get screwed even when you work hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's not fair, and that's life. Right. But given the personality of your child, you have to phrase that differently and show that differently and teach that differently. It's really difficult. And then you see your kids, you know, having struggles and trials. And like for Tegan, one that's been so tough for like 2 years now, he like loves sports, loves playing basketball and soccer and stuff. And 2 years ago, he started having these nasty, nasty cramps. And to the point that he would like be limping around and couldn't walk and couldn't run. I'm like, what is going on? So we've been seeing specialists and doctors and therapy and all kinds of things. And finally, and it's super frustrating. So like, poor kid, looks like a normal kid running around. All of a sudden, he's like nearly falling down. He's limping off the field. I'm like, what's up? He's like, oh, my hip, it hurts so bad. And he'd be in tears. He'd wake up in the morning and he's like, couldn't get out of bed because he's so locked up. I'm like, what is going on?
And early on, I remember, like, you start thinking worst case scenario.
You know,
you're
sitting there being like, cancer. Or
exactly,
like,
right?
Who knows what?
So everybody's been like, you know.
And through that too, like the acknowledgement of like what could be, I'm like, I want to be at peace with that. You know, we all get dealt a different hand, and I want to be a good steward of the one that I get. And if we end up with some real big hardship, then I'll embrace that and make the best of it. That's okay. It's going to be hard, but of course, that's far easier to say than do for any of us. But anyway, just recently, in the last couple months, we went to another specialist who like really knows joints and kids and development. And because I was getting frustrated with the medical community, I'm like, give us a friggin' answer, book them in. It's like 8 months to get in to get a CT scan or X-ray. All this has been ridiculous. We kind of been blown off by a few people. Finally get into another specialist and they go through stuff. I'm like, oh, it's growing pains. I'm like, what? It's a growth plate down by sacrum, and it does this, and it's connected here and here. It's on both sides. This is this. Some people get it really bad, and some people don't. And now we'll get you to a therapist who can give you a bunch of exercises, and this is probably going to be like this for the next like several years. Ugh, you poor guy. And I had some substantial growing pain stuff. I had knee problems. I had friends who like grew like stupid amounts over a summer, and they were like on crutches for a couple months because they grew so quick, and joints and ligaments all screwed up. So Tegan seems to be on the negative side of that. So major issues there. So we're like doing workouts with them, 4 times a week and working on that. But seeing your child suffer and deal with discomfort and then having to exercise in ways that hurt for a long-term benefit that they're not going to reap the benefits of for a long time. And kids have their view of the future is like in an hour from now or for tomorrow. It's not way down the road.
I think that's still my view. Do you have a nice like 5-year, 10-year view? No. So
it's so tough for Tegan. I'm like, yeah, this is going to hurt. And it's going to continue to hurt. And the exercises are going to hurt, but there's still good things to do. So I like when I'm doing my workouts, a couple of them a week, then I have him down there with me. We kind of do our different routines together. And at times he can't do them and he's got tears coming down his face when he's doing like, Bulgarian split squats and different things. I'm like, you poor guy. And other times it's not bothering him too much and he can get through them and try to be encouraging and supportive. But like, again, here's a tangible, practical, real world experience of like, this hurts. This is hard. This is good for me. I don't like it. But to develop that perseverance to like stay the course, is so critical. So anyway, that's a long answer to say like, I definitely try to be intentional with my kids, and I can be too bullheaded and firm and short fused and not enough margin at times for sure. But at the same time, I try to like be vulnerable to the kids, and at times like, hey, that situation that went down and how that got dealt with, I'm tired, frustrated, and I'm sorry. And try to not give the disclaimer, but you were being this. And it's like, as much as there's value and there's a time and a place for some of those things, I want to actually, without a disclaimer, is like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have talked in that manner. And just for them to hear my full, genuine, honest apology and ownership of like my side of things and to leave it, those are things that are increasingly more important so that they enter their adult years with a place of vulnerability and honesty to the people around them. My endeavor for my kids is kind of my like biggest priority. Is like, I want to, beyond everything else, I want to teach them how to think, not what to think, and apply that to everything. How you have a conversation with someone you struggle with, how you choose a job, how you deal with hard questions, train them how to be analytical and logical and think through things properly to come to hopefully a good decision on their own and to maybe pursue some counsel. I don't want to program them what to think, because the day comes when all of a sudden they question why they're thinking what they're thinking. I was just told to think that. Well, why? And then the whole psychology crumbles. So yeah, there's kind of like my pursuit to parenting currently.
What would your response be, Brad?
Again, being Luke's brother and us being raised by the same parents and all this stuff, it's, there's a lot of similarities there for sure, I think, and a lot of the basis, but we're also very different people. We're very different in our personalities. And Luke, I would say, has always been much more of like a student and perfecting things and learning how to do things and logical and a lot of that kind of stuff. Mine has been probably a lot more just playing things by ear, and that comes in music and and different things, right? Just so we're different in that way. And so as much as, yes, we were raised by the same parents, that also has a different outcome, depending on the personality that you have, right? And so I think a little bit for me was like, again, I have had that, like, kind of like you said earlier, and I appreciate your, just the things that you say about me as a father and things that you like to do. I also know that it is a little bit of my personality, and I think fathers have to be careful that, again, they're not judging themselves against all the other fathers, because for what is relaxing to me and what is enjoyable for me with my kids might be very different from the next guy. And so I think something about my personality, the way that I'm wired, sometimes my relaxing is actually, I get filled up by doing things with my kids, like being creative. It's that little kid in me, and going and doing some adventure or building something. Whereas other dads are like, that sounds like the worst thing. That just takes it out of me. That is not energy giving. And that's actually way more normal than I think my personality style. The fact that I get energy off that thing. So my natural thing is to actually go and engage with them because it feels good for me. And, it's an energy giving, life giving thing. But that's not something that I've had to work on to try to, like, I'm going to really, it's a very innate, natural thing. And so I think that's something that I find is a real blessing for me. And I even noticed when I built my house and I had this crash that we've talked about and go through anxiety, depression, my thing that I found out even through counseling is being close to my kids and my family and having that really close unit is actually what filled me up. Whereas most people, they need maybe solitude and they need things to be a lot more calm and they need things to be, to help them recover. So I would just say again to the fathers and the moms, I think it goes obviously both ways, to not judge yourself like crazy over those things. I think it is hard if you are a father that comes home and you are someone who doesn't get energy from that. And it's not, that you have to do it, probably some extra work to be able to engage and to show your kids you love them, even though I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. And the last thing that I want right now is to have you come and jump on my lap and scream and want to, like that's really tough. And so I feel for that, so it's, like Luke said, we all get dealt a bit of a different hand, but
Christian and I are learning. We were sitting in the hot tub last night talking about it because our kids, we're going through this weird phase of our kids leaving home and then coming back.
Let's jump into that on the next part of this.
Sure.
We've got some time restraints, and this I'm going to say is probably going to be a multi-episode topic because we haven't even touched on
9 episodes.
We haven't even touched on there's so many stories and near misses and parenting fail moment stuff. Like, it's just super rich. I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah.
Before we jump into kind of the next season and going around that, I would love it to have more time for you to expound on your experience a little more too. Yeah. So we're going to jump into that on a following episode, and we'll figure out what to name this. Dads of some sort, trades, fathers, I don't know. We'll see. Family. But we'll carry on this discussion because I think it's a super valuable one. And there's all kinds of lessons that we have learned and are continuing to learn that I think are great, great to share. So thanks so much, guys, for sitting in and chatting and being vulnerable. And we'll carry on with that in a following episode. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll talk to you again next time.